Senator Davey.
Thank you very much. And it's really important. I want to make sure that we get on the record our position on this bill and on divestiture laws. It is no secret that the Nationals have been calling for divestiture powers for quite some time. My leader, David Littleproud, has been calling for it as recently as February. But it is also very important that we get it right, that we don't rush divestiture powers through, that we take the time to ensure they are fit for purpose. Let me make it clear. Most like economies around the world have divestment powers in their legislation. They are a mechanism to ensure that big corporations, particularly big corporations that have monopoly-like scenarios, do the right thing, don't misuse their market powers, and if they do, if they are found to be misusing them, there is a mechanism in law that action can be taken. Divestment powers are supported within our economy, particularly the former competition ACCC Commissioner Alan Fells. He says granting the watchdog powers to call for the breakup of corporate giants would act as a big stick against anti-competitive behaviour. He makes it clear that the existence of the power on big business is a huge stick that is needed to make sure some parts of the Competition and Consumer Act work more effectively. At the moment, Section 46 of the Act currently prohibits companies with substantial market power from taking advantage of their power by inhibiting rivals. But what we know, and what we are increasingly hearing through the Senate Committee into Supermarkets, is that Section 46 is not working. It is not strong enough to ensure that companies with substantial market powers don't inhibit their rivals. We are hearing stories of the large corporate supermarkets effectively land banking, buying blocks of commercial land to prevent rivals from opening up a competing store. We are hearing stories of supermarkets requiring suppliers, particularly suppliers in the fresh food areas like horticulture, to sign exclusivity contracts for providing a set amount of product, but not having similar requirements in reverse. So we're hearing stories where a supermarket goes to a supplier and says, you must supply only us, you can't supply us and your local farmers market, you must supply only us with a product of a set aesthetic, size, quality, and we want, say, 10 tonne a month. So the grower goes and plants enough to produce the 10 tonne a month with enough sort of wriggle room so they all meet the strict quality requirements. But then at the end of the month, the supermarket goes, I only need 5 tonne, and I'm only going to pay you for 5 tonne. But that supplier can't then go and sell the other 5 tonne elsewhere because of the exclusivity contract. And that's not fair. How is that not taking advantage? How is that not undertaking actions that inhibit rivals? So I agree with Mr Phelps when he says that Section 46 of the Competition and Consumer Act is relatively ineffective and has very minor penalties or fines which make most big businesses don't take too much notice of it. They sort of factor it into their business models. Oh, if we get a little fine through Section 46, so be it. That's just the cost of doing business. And that's not good enough. So that is why the Nationals have been calling for big stick legislation. It's why we have grave concerns about the fact that 3 of the big supermarkets control over 74% of the grocery market. They are the market. They do dictate prices. And they put pressure on suppliers. But what we're seeing as well, when they dictate the price to the suppliers and the farmers, that doesn't translate to the checkout. When meat prices go down at the marketplace, they don't go down at the checkout. Anyone gone to buy a lamb cutlet lately? I love lamb, my favourite meat. And the ACCC needs powers to properly investigate as part of a dedicated inquiry. They need the powers to be able to call witnesses and compel witnesses, and they need the powers to recommend harsher penalties. That's what the Nationals have been calling for. We'd like to see increased penalties, scaling up, and we want to see divestiture powers. We want to be able to force supermarkets who do the wrong thing to be forced to sell off a component of their business. For example, Woolworths get rid of BWS, or Coles get rid of Liquorland. What I don't agree with is the current scare campaign by the Business Council of Australia, who are running around saying if we introduce divestiture powers, all the regional towns will lose their supermarkets and it will negatively impact on the regions. That's not how we're talking. This is not what the design... If we design a proper model for divestiture, which is what the Nationals are working on, which is what we are currently talking to our opposition counterparts about, it's about designing a model where the ACCC can properly investigate, the ACCC can recommend actions, and where it is found that a market power is not operating with the best interests of suppliers and consumers, that an application can be made to a court to enforce divestment. That does not automatically mean that the divestment will occur in a regional area. It might be, and I heard the case study the other day of a number of years ago when in the town of Cooma there was only one supermarket brand in that town. There were a couple of supermarkets, but they were both the same brand, and they had bought up a lot of the commercial land to prevent rivals entering that market. In those circumstances, the court could recommend that that brand would either have to divest themselves of one of their supermarkets or of the commercial land that they'd bought up to enable a rival, to enable more competition. It might be that the recommendation or the action taken by the court is to have divestment of a smaller business unit within the large business. What it won't be is get rid of 20% of your stores and we're going to leave it to the market monopoly provider to decide what 20% of those stores are, which is what the BCA's claims are. If you tell Coles or Woolies to get rid of 20% of their stores, they're only going to close down stores in regional areas. I don't believe that for a second. That is a scare campaign that is being conducted by people who don't want to see Australia, like other similar economies around the world, have a big stick to hold market monopolies to account. Just yesterday in this chamber, we heard from Senator Penny Wong, time and time again, talking about the fuel efficiency standards. Why is Australia lagging? Why is Australia the only Western economy not to have fuel efficiency standards? We need to keep up with the rest of the world. Well, why doesn't she apply the same thinking to divestment powers? Why is Australia one of the only Western economies not to have divestiture powers for big corporate market operators? And that's why we in the Nationals, understanding that horticulture farmers and other suppliers to the big supermarkets are struggling, when we hear examples where we've got watermelon farmers selling their product for $1.50, but it's being sold for upwards of $5 in the supermarkets, or when we hear last night from the melon growers that their costs of doing business are going up and up.
Senator Davey, I'm sorry to interrupt.